Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, baby, let me dance in your love. I wanna feel your fire, rising from the flames that dies only to burn again. Let me dance in the rhythm of your flame. If I burn, let me die to burn again. If I burn, let me die to burn again. Oh,
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Herbal Knowledge Keepers. And we are going to do a second episode with Anne Merrill, our guest from Berlin. And of course, my co-host is Dakota Granny Woman. And when we did part one, we had some internet challenges at our end. And we really wanted to create the space and do Anne justice and have a full-out, good running show. And we're going to elaborate on the topics. And we also want you to be aware that this show, the Herbal Knowledge Keepers, is based upon the herbal. I went blank. The herbal database. The herbal database. See, I want to go herbal knowledge. The herbaldatabase.org. And that the theme and the foundation of this show is this is a database that Dakota Granny Woman's been working on. My gosh, it's got to be over. It's got to be close to 11 years, 12 years. And it's got thousands, hundreds of thousands of entries and cross-referencing. It's a phenomenal collection of knowledge and wisdom. And that you'll see it demonstrated. Dakota will pull it up at some point during the show. And if you go back to our first episode, episode 1, it has a full introduction on how to use the herbal database. And so I'm going to now turn this over to, I'm Blue Star Deer Woman, and Dakota Granny Woman will let you do your intro and take it from here.
Okay, well, it's really great to be back with Anne and with all of you guys, of course. We felt like we were really just getting started with Anne last time. And today we're going to just continue the conversation comparing healthcare in general in Germany and the United States with, of course, the emphasis on herbal medicine. And Anne had a lot of material that she didn't get to cover last time, so we're going to let her take us away on a journey through what she had for us prepared. And a few other topics that we're going to get into. In this country, essential oils are really big, so we're going to talk about whether that's also the case in Germany, and we're going to get into vaccination, how do the two countries compare, and a whole bunch of other topics. So it is going to be a really interesting show. Anne is with us from Berlin, and she started out her her career in learning herbalism, as many of us do, as a passionate youngster wanting to learn everything about the plant world. And then, of course, a lot of us, we just study on our own all the time. But then she became a student of Michael Moore and was in his last class. She taught herbalism in Texas for many years, and then was whisked off to Berlin, where she has had the opportunity to really get a feel for what's been going on there. In our last show, which I encourage you to watch, she showed us some great photos of the abbey where Hildegard von Bingen was, and shared with us some really interesting information about her. And also shared with us about how in Germany there's really not a distinction between herbal medicine and their conventional medicine, that doctors will prescribe herbs and you can buy herbs at the pharmacy. In fact, it's the main place where you buy herbs. And in Germany, everybody just drinks bitters all the time, which is what allows them to eat a sausage diet. So anyway, that's just a very brief teaser for the old show. That I don't mean old, it's only, 2 episodes ago. And so we're going to go ahead and just kind of take this free form. I'm going to turn it over to Anne because, as I said, she didn't finish everything she had to say. So Anne, take it away.
Something I remembered as you were speaking that I didn't mention last time was that school children here, all the school kids go on herb walks. That's part of education here. So when I first got here and I was talking to people about, how am I going to make a living as an herbalist here, that was one of the first recommendations that people had for me was, be one of the people who takes the kids on their field trips when they go and learn about herbs. That was really funny. I'm not really a kid person. I decided that's not what I want. But I think that's really cool that that's something that's considered, one of the basic things that everybody needs to learn at school.
Yeah. How about, do they integrate gardening for the children?
I'm not sure. I don't know about gardening specifically, but one thing I did notice, there's a lesson, I think it's for about kids who are 9 years old or so, where they make homemade ravioli, and which I think is a really cool activity for kids to. There's so many steps to that. It makes sense that it's a thing that you would, you'd learn a lot. I can imagine how to get together with your other 9 or 10-year-old classmates, there'd be a lot to think about and learn about from that, and that was when I noticed that, because this happens every year, that in the United States, there's this whole thing of each of the school districts kind of has their own program, and the states decide certain things about requirements. But I think in the United States, there's generally an overall idea that it would be a bad thing to have centralized control and to have, all the 3rd graders learning this thing this week and all the 2nd graders learning this thing. But what I realized when there's this week each year where everybody's all excited about homemade ravioli, and how cool it is to have children's activities be something that's part of the culture.
Yeah.
And not just, something that's on TV or movies or, popular culture that's trying to sell you something, but something that's actually a public social thing, the education of children, having this rhythm and predictability to it that makes it so it's not quite a holiday, but it's at least an annual event that's part of the culture. But
that's funny how they've made ravioli part of German culture.
Yeah.
Yeah, you think they would be making like knackwurst or something?
Well, yeah, everybody loves Italian food.
Yeah.
True.
Let's not forget, we are an international species.
Yes, exactly. But, yeah, so a lot of plant walks. So people, I would say, there's a sort of baseline knowledge of wild herbs that's a lot higher than it is in the United States. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows nettles and chickweed and dandelion and that sort of thing. They all had to learn it at school.
Weren't you mentioning, was it you? I think so, was mentioning how after World War II, the Germans didn't have much food and they were living on nettles and rose hips?
Rose hips, yeah. I was telling the story of how I told a woman here that I was an herbalist, and she said, oh, Germans love herbs. And she said after the war, everybody was so mad at us and we were starving and they wouldn't sell us any food. And so that's one of the things that people did to survive. So it's been interesting. In the past few weeks, I've met a number of people who are interested in foraging, and it seems like foraging is interesting how it's like to some people it's associated with fancy restaurants and gourmet products, and then to other people it's desperation and poverty. And it's an interesting contrast that it can go both ends of the spectrum like that.
Yeah, I always think of foraging as survival.
Right.
But now it's coming back into our vocabulary because now we're talking about edible gardens, edible forests, edible parks, edible cities. It's becoming more of being able to recognize the food so you can nosh as you go along. When I was in Hawaii on the Big Island, I mean, it just blew me away how you could walk any of the streets and, pick an avocado or a citrus fruit. It was amazing to me.
Yeah.
Food was just abundantly there. I mean, I would think it's got to be one of the best places to be homeless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said something about a fennel class that you took.
Oh, yeah. So I went to this.
You want to share some of that with us?
The reason I wasn't on the show 2 weeks ago is because I wanted to go to this class. So I have an herb shop in the neighborhood, and they do these classes that are one herb at a time, which is a style of herb teaching that I really like, where you, I think most of all, I feel like I get a sense of the personality of a plant in a way that I can't otherwise. When I've been in a room full of people who have all experienced the plant together, it somehow amplifies the personality of the plant to me. So, I mean, something I like to do regularly myself anyway is in the morning when I'm still fresh and it's easy to get into a meditative state and kind of go blank and drink tea of an herb and try to really witness it and experience it in my body and take notes and everything. I learn a lot that way, but it's nowhere near if I'm in a room with 12 other people who are also mindfully experiencing that herb. So I love that style of class in general. Yeah. So that's why I was excited to go to it. And these people are interesting. They do I forget what it's called. It's not paleo. I'll grab the book in a second, but it's archaeosophic. It's an Italian guy's way of looking at herbs and sort of life philosophy. So they use his books. But so it was really interesting. It was fennel class, and we did the tea where the seeds are infused, which is very different from the tea when the seeds are boiled. They had this sweet fennel and bitter fennel seed, which I had never run into before. I don't know if you were familiar with. I really liked the bitter fennel seed. It had a really great flavor. I would say the thing that I never really got about fennel before is that it's so relaxing. I felt so happy. And just chill, and I wasn't anticipating that. Like I don't know.
Were they just using the seed and not the leaf?
Yes. They were using, let's see, what did we have? We had, we had the tea of the bitter seed, the tea of the sweet seed. Something they did, I'd heard of, but never done this before. They did the thing of putting a drop of essential oil on sugar and eating it.
Okay.
I thought that was kind of awful. I didn't like it. We didn't know. Most people didn't like it.
Yeah. Well, what's the properties of having an essential oil on sugar?
Well, just that it's a way to sort of get the essential oil into you. You know, you wouldn't want to just take it on a spoon, but and the idea is, you know, it's supposed to be it uses a carminative, and so for digestion and flatulence and that kind of thing. And so I could see how that would be if you didn't have another preparation. But why would you have the essential oil and not have any other preparation? But yeah, that's not something I would do again. But I like to experiment. I like to know the things I won't want to do as well.
So now, was fennel relatively new to you? You haven't used it much?
Oh, I've used it quite a bit. And that's a nice thing. It's like, as long as something's in German, it can be the same material I already know, and it's still fascinating. So I learn all these vocabulary words, you know. So yeah, these classes are in German.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So they kind of know, like, you know, oh, she knows a lot of the material, but it's all new language. So that's part of it for me. But like I said, I love the experience. I would go to that class in English too, because I just love, I love the group experience of herbs. It's really.
Now, what you had said that you did in infusion. Yeah.
Yes, it's when you pour the hot water over the herb and you let it sit, as opposed to a decoction, which is where you simmer it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I've done a lot of fennel seed decoction. I hadn't done it as an infusion, and it has a really different flavor. I've never done it alone as an infusion. Of course, I've had teas that had it in there, but.
And which fennel is it that we make rye bread? Is it the rye bread that has the fennel in it?
Caraway.
No, that's caraway. Okay, but which is the popular fennel? Because you mentioned two. A sweet and a bitter. What's the one that we're...
is the seed that gives Italian sausage its flavor.
Okay.
That's the sweet fennel. But then and then the bitter fennel, I think it has about twice the essential oils per weight that the sweet does. So it's more intense and not as... I liked it better.
Oh, isn't there an alcohol? Is it anisect?
Yeah.
Which one would that be? Is that the sweet or
I think that might be from anise, isn't it? Anise is another plant altogether.
Oh, okay.
Ouzo is usually flavored with fennel.
Now, while we're talking about this, I'm going to pull up the database to show the section on fennel. And this is what always happens to me, because there's always something that needs to be added. So now I know that I have to add the bitter fennel seed, because this is
okay.
But we also see here the Florence fennel, Finocchio. So that's the fennel bulb.
Yeah.
And,
it was so funny. The teacher said fennel root, but he said it in German, and I said, well, it's not really a root. And then it took me a minute to remember, oh, people say fennel root about the bulb in English too. And it's not a root, it's a bulb above ground.
I'm going to click open. Well, first of all, I'm just thinking some people may not have seen the database. So just a real quick couple words about it. This is the information panel that I'm clicking, and then this is a link to the genus. And clicking the downward arrow brings the screen down, and I can use the search box over here, and I'll demonstrate that later. We don't click on this thing that says search. So as soon as I click on something, and so this is Funiculum vulgare. This is the most generally used fennel. And we see up here that it likes to grow in full sun. If you get into the gardening, we talk about how to grow it. I'm pulling the scroll bar to show some of the information about it. So if you tincture it, the best ratios of alcohol to water is a 60 to 65% to get the most out of it. And we see here also a number of things that fennel seed treats. And one of the most interesting to me is that it treats vision loss, age-related vision loss. It's one of the things for the eyes. And so if you make that fennel infusion, strain it carefully and use it in an eye cup, it's very good for the eyes, and of course drinking it as well. It's antiviral. I'm going to get into that a little bit maybe today about, well, we'll see. Antioxidant, it's good for bedwetting, irritable bladder. I'm just going through a few of these. You can see how widely extensive its applications are. It modulates estrogen, and so that's how it can help with menstrual period problems. Of course, in all kinds of digestive things, glaucoma. It helps people who are in high altitudes, like if hikers. There's something called high altitude pulmonary edema, where pulmonary relating to the lungs, where you're not getting enough oxygen. And if you chew fennel seeds when you're hiking at a high altitude, it helps prevent that.
Yeah.
And hirsutism in women, when we start getting too hairy, it can help that because it's estrogen modulating. Great for hoarseness, hyperacidity, kidney stones, internal parasites, PMS, a lot of women's problems. In Chinese medicine, they use it for qi stagnation. And then we see in terms of energetics that it's considered, as you were saying, Anne, sweet tasting, and it's warming and moistening. For tuberculosis, vaginal atrophy, and for that you use it as a vaginal steam. For vision, wheezing. So these are, and it's a great one for honey extraction. That's why it's connected here. So you can take those seeds and just extract and infuse them in honey for a period of time. And I wouldn't bother straining them out. And then we've got the studies. Actually, before I click on that, I'll show you this. All of these things over here are also related directly to fennel seeds. So we can go to the fennel essential oil. These purple colors are some of the phytochemicals that are in fennel that make it work. It has melatonin in it, by the way.
Interesting.
It's great for the lymphatic constitution when you get into learning about different kinds of constitutions. So those are attached to some herbs, also for the melancholic temperament and for this tissue state, cold depression. So just clicking over to some studies, and if we pull the screen up, oh yikes, these photos are in the way of me scrolling through this. Oh well, that's all right. You can look at these studies, and then we see how to prepare it here.
You're talking about the photos from the Zoom room?
Yeah, they're in the way of my scroll bar.
You can minimize them too.
They are minimized. You mean to minimize them even more?
Yeah, there's a flat line and it'll close them. See it up there?
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Okay, good,
Okay.
good. All right, so here's information on, and you can use the root too. When they say root, it doesn't necessarily mean the bulb. It can also mean the root. So there's information in here about, let me just pull this up. I don't think I showed that enough. About using the root, the leaf. Okay, so here's all kinds of other information about the seed in more detail. It's good for poisoning from mushrooms or herbs. Skin blemishes, breast conditions. So it's it covers a lot of ground, and we tend to think of it as just this common kind of herb that's good for flavoring food.
Yeah.
Makes a nice tasting drink, maybe for stomach problems, but it's amazing. And of course, there are cautions. You don't want to take medicinal doses during pregnancy because it's a uterine stimulant. And then here's an herb, a drug that could interact with it. So always we want to check and see if people are taking any kind of drugs. So
Although despite those cautions, it is one that's commonly mentioned as being very safe for babies.
yeah.
And,
It's just,
and used a lot for when
you're right.
small children have digestive problems. It's really great for colic.
Yes, and the caution was only for pregnancy because of its effect on the uterus. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very, very safe herb. And of course, in Indian restaurants, they'll serve fennel seeds after a meal to chew on to help with the
That's right.
breath and digestion and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So
I
anyway.
grew a lot of it in my garden this past year, and can I share my favorite way to cook it? I like to slice it up and put it in the oven with ghee and salt and sunflower seeds. A friend of mine served it to me that way once, and it's so good.
Okay, so you put it in the oven with ghee, salt,
Sliced up, and
slice
then some ghee, some salt, and some sunflower seeds.
the bulb. Or
Yeah, the bulb.
Okay, bulb. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Because I love how sometimes these particular combination, it's just like, yes, that's how we do this from now on,
Yeah, that's a good one.
I ate that many times this summer.
So,
I love that plant because of the fact that you can harvest the bulb, you can harvest the greens.
yeah.
The caterpillars love it, and so you're supporting butterflies by letting them eat some of your fennel. And then it's got those beautiful flowers. I even at a gourmet shop once I got fennel pollen, which is it's an interesting flavor, and it looks decorative on your fancy gourmet plate. And then it goes to seed, and then you have that medicine too. It's one of those wonderful plants where every single phase, every single part is useful. I just love it.
And it's really beautiful.
And it's beautiful, that too, yes.
Well, that's the thing we need a picture.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what you're talking about, the bulb part of it.
Okay.
So I'd like to see a picture.
How do I get out of here? All right. I'll see if I can find one in the database.
Okay, good. Okay, did you get it with the change?
Well, not of the bulb, but if you put your cursor over fennel seed itself, there's a photo that will pop out, but let's see if it's in.
So I'll share my screen, and I will do that. Here we go. That's the beautiful flower. I just love those. So fennel bulb doesn't have a picture.
Okay. If you click on, there's a recipe, fennel cranberry chutney, yeah. But if you click on it, let's see, I think it might come up.
Let's hope so.
See how fast
There it is. That's what fennel bulb looks like.
Oh, wait, let me get over there again.
Delicious.
Oh, hold up.
Want me to put it back up?
Yes, please. I was just checking the chat room, and I missed the...
Okay.
Oh my gosh, it looks just like garlic.
But much bigger.
Yeah, it's quite large.
It's quite large. And that part is revealed above the earth?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like celery. It's very closely related to celery. And if you just imagine, instead of the celery stalks being straight, kind of making more of a circular shape like that.
And when you were talking about your recipe, you were talking about using that whole bulb.
Yes, and just slicing it.
Okay, so that's different from the seeds are up on top, right?
Yeah, although this one you don't usually use for the seed.
Oh.
See, there's two different types, but now we see
Okay.
there's three, because I'm going to have to look up the bitter.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
In fact, there is, and I may have grown it because when I was growing fennel, I had a regular one, and then I had another one. I don't even remember what it was that I used for seed. It was I think they called it bronze fennel.
Okay, yeah.
And that might be the same thing as bitter fennel. I'll have to check on that and add it to the database. But the bronze fennel is also, I mean, it's a different color and everything. It may be a bitter seed. I don't know. So I'd like to just jump into some of the information that you didn't get to last time. Are you ready?
Well, let's see. I don't know what to say. I kind of picked all the good things, you know. What were we going to talk about?
Well, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll simplify it for you. Oh, do you have something?
No, go ahead.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about was the essential oils, and I think that ties in with history and with the difference in both of these countries. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to discover how they're dealt with in Germany yet or not, have you?
A little bit. I went on a trip to France that was about aromatherapy and essential oils in southern France, and it's a huge part of the culture there in France, but Germany isn't someplace where very many fragrant plants grow very well. It's a much colder climate, and so it's not really a part of the traditional culture here in the way that it is in France. So I think that might be why I think they're just not as commonly used. I just don't hear a whole lot about them here.
Yeah.
Whereas in France, I'd love to share this one story with you. We were in a lavender growing region, and you see the wild lavender and how incredible that is, and then the commercial lavender, and that's a little upsetting. But then we went to this lavender farm that had a museum, and they had all of these old stills, and they're just so cool, these old copper stills. And most of them were built on on wagon bottoms, so they had wheels attached to them, and they could roll them from place to place. And so people could gather their lavender, and then the person who owned a still could go from farm to farm and distill their lavender. That's how it used to be done traditionally. And then what happened was it used to be these got inherited in families, typically be owned by the patriarch, and then he'd pass it along. And they changed the law in France, and they made it so that you had to pay a fee to the government in order to acquire one. Even if you inherited it from your father, you had to pay the government. And so then what they did is these inspectors would come around, and if people hadn't paid for the still, they would punch a hole in it.
Oh, wow.
And then once I read the plaque describing that, I realized the reason there are all these beautiful old stills in this museum is because they were all destroyed by government inspectors. Because they would all be perfectly serviceable still, because there's nothing changes with a copper still. A copper still from 200 years ago is just as good as a copper still from last year, but they'd all been destroyed, and you can't patch holes in essential oil stills, because the material that you would use to patch the hole would then contaminate the essential oil. So they're destroyed forever. And
are we in which country are we? Is this
France.
happening? In France, okay.
France, where there's a lot of this sort of that style of bureaucracy, that punitive, cruel style of bureaucracy, and government inspectors coming around and destroying local customs. It's a big tradition in France. And as an herbalist and as somebody who just loves lavender, that story, to me, that's just my paradigmatic story about bureaucracy gone wrong and destroying the good things in the world.
That reminds me of something else in relation to contagions that destroy large populations, whether it's the plague or any virulent organism that just sweeps through a population. And 2,500 years ago, one of the famous Ayurvedic physicians, Chikara, nailed it. He said, "The source of all contagion is government." And he went on to describe his observations. He had been observing for a long time. He was a really famous physician. He said what happens was when the leadership becomes corrupt, greedy, power hungry, it starts to take too much away from the people, and the environment, and I'm paraphrasing this quote, but the environment suffers from various kinds of pollution. The weather changes, the rains don't come on time, crops fail, people, as a result of all of this, don't get enough good nutrition, and there's decay in the environment, a lot of toxins in the environment, so their immune systems are weakened, and that's when they become vulnerable to all of these organisms. So that was 2,500 years ago. Wow. And he said it all comes back to governments just, ignoring what's good for the people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just want to take a moment here and acknowledge we have several folks in our chat room space.
Oh, good.
And I want to acknowledge all of you. Thank you for being here with us. And at any time, if there's anything you want more clarity about in this conversation, just write it in the chat room, and we'll communicate that to each other and answer it as best we can. And also, viewers and listeners, you always can call into this show and join the conversation at any time, including you chat room beings. If you want to just jump in the conversation, you're always welcome to just dial in. And again, you'll see that we have our guest, Anne Merrill, and her website is on the broadcast window. And then Dakota Granny Woman, we have the herbaldatabase.org. And that's what you saw come up on the screen a short while ago, where Anne and Dakota were both looking through and researching on fennel. So go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, guys. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Anne and I don't know about Anne, but I can't see the chat window. And is going to be looking at that and letting us know if there's anything we need to cover for you guys. Share the screen again in the essential oils. And one of the things that occurs to me, and aside from the fact that Germany is in a more northern clime, we have a lot of people here in the States who are also in northern climes who are crazy about essential oils. So there's more to it than where they grow, and a lot of it has to do with marketing. So I'm going to go, actually, I think I'm going to use the more pins section up here. Let me get rid of that again. Okay. More pins, and there's a section here that's kind of like the main heading for essential oils. Right there, I'm clicking on it, and I just want to kind of give you an idea of what you'll find here. There's a lot of confusion about essential oils and their role. Historically, it's kind of interesting. The aromatic plants are what give us the essential oils. And those are basically volatile compounds that are made up of primarily things like terpenoids, sesquiterpenes, that sort of thing. And they're just very small molecules that are called secondary metabolites. And they represent the intelligence of plants, because plants, when they need to protect themselves from the same kind of things that we do, viruses, bacteria, parasites. They can't go to the doctor, and they can't run away, and they can't take medicine, so they make their own substances to protect themselves from virtually the same kind of things that we're interested in protecting ourselves from. So they create these volatile oils to do that, and they're also used to attract insects, the pollinators, or to repel the bad insects, and also to repel herbivores. So they're protective, and the plants have been developing them for a very, very long time. And because they're responsive to the environment where the plant is growing, they can change a lot according to what the conditions are, the soil, what plants are growing around them, the time of year, and then there are a lot of different varieties of the same plant, like you were talking about, Anne, with lavender. There are a lot of different varieties of lavender, and each one of those is going to have a different composition. And the time of year that it's harvested is going to yield up a different composition of those oils. We get into that when we look at the chemotypes.
Well, before you leave the essential oils, we have a question in the chat room.
Okay.
We're being asked to please talk about what herbs are good for depression, anxiety, and then as we moved into essential oils, we're being asked if you could speak to essential oils that would be good for depression and anxiety.
Okay. Well, we've got one. One of the things I started doing, and this is not finished yet, was kind of collecting the essential oils together under certain headings. And so I don't think it is under...
There's essential oils for anxiety.
Yeah, there's anxiety right there.
Yeah, we've got anxiety, but I haven't done that for depression yet.
Okay.
So these are the best, and this is according to both clinical or biomedical research and tradition. And the way these work is they have an effect on basically the brain. And so you can, under this heading, I haven't added anything. That's just a heading. So you could go to each one of these and let's take clary sage, for example, and learn about it. It has a calming effect on the nervous system, and compare them with each other. And I haven't added that to quite the right place yet, but here's for depression. We have clary sage again, manuka, which is a type of a melaleuca plant. Rose geranium, that's going to be more effective if the anxiety or depression is somehow related to hormone imbalance. So all of these, they work in a slightly different way. One thing I do want to say about the lemon is there are some oils that oxidize and degrade pretty quickly, and their effectiveness goes way down, and they can even become somewhat toxic. A lemon is one of those, and so are the pine oils. So if you're using lemon or pine, for example, there was a study that compared them being stored at 77 degrees and opened for 3 minutes a day to use, and their the useful volatile oil content plunged very quickly. So
it doesn't have a long shelf life, basically, is what we're
right.
saying.
However, if they also compared them to keeping them at a cool temperature, and they lasted longer, and not opening that bottle for, you don't want to keep it open for 3 minutes. That's why you'll pour what you need quickly out into a carrier oil or your diffuser and get that lid back on. So for lemon and pine, it would be a good idea to keep those in the refrigerator
Okay. We had some feedback in the chat room. I used peppermint, clary sage, and lavender while pregnant. They helped me immensely. So I guess, are you suggesting, Laura, that those were addressing anxiety? Or is that, what was why did you use those? Something, the question here for depression and anxiety. And also, I want to just take a moment because I'm not sure if everyone in our chat room has the information about this. Is the herbal database, and this is available to all of us. And if you go to herbaldatabase.org, there is the intro to this and how you can register and have access to this very rich resource. And so that's what you're getting to see on here. Dakota's going to the different categories and clicking on them. And in our first episode, there's a full introduction, episode 1, of how to use the herbal database, just to get you on board here.
One of the things that I think is most important to know about essential oils is there's a lot of confusion about them because we get our information from 3 sources, either the pharmaceutical companies, which don't know much about these natural products, or are interested in them, and or we get them from scientific studies, or we get them from just internet medicine, just kind of like running all over the internet to find out something. A lot what happens is in the studies, and I pulled this up because I think this is really important for everybody to understand, because we hear about using them for influenza and or gastrointestinal infections, and so it's not just contagion, but just any infectious disease. What happens is they're tested usually in a petri dish when there are scientific studies, and they'll take a specific pathogen and cultivate it in the petri dish, and then dip like a blotter paper in an essential oil and put it down there and see what happens. And so that's the results that you'll be seeing when you see a study that says that oregano oil, for example, kills, maybe a type of influenza, let's say. However, when you take them into the body, they don't work the same way. Right. Generally, they'll only be effective when they're in direct contact with the pathogen. Once that pathogen is in the cell, they don't work. And so they can be useful, though, in this way, using them to clean your home, like to wipe counters down, because they'll kill salmonella, right? They'll kill all these germs that are in the house. If you diffuse them, they'll purify the air. And then using them topically in a carrier oil if there's some type of a fungal infection or something like that. And so I suggest what I did here. I love David Crow's video here, Essential Oils for Fighting Contagion, and I transcribed it because I think he really nails it in terms of clarifying the way essential oils work when we're dealing with pathogens and taking them internally. The human body is so complex, you never know what's going to happen. And he gives an example. He had a gastrointestinal infection, and he learned that oregano oil was really good for the particular pathogen he had. So he was taking oregano oil capsules. Well, it turns out whenever you have an infection, especially in the gastrointestinal tract, but anywhere, there's inflammation. And these essential oils tend to be high in phenolic compounds, which are caustic. And so when he took the oregano oil, what he did was it was like fighting fire with fire. It didn't really put out the pathogen so much as it increased the inflammation of his digestive tract. And so what he really should have used was a soothing, cooling, demulcent herb to soothe that inflammation along his intestinal tract. So it's important to really learn about these. There's a lot of, what happens is there'll be a study that says that it kills streptococcus, one of these essential oils kills strep. And then the marketing people get a hold of it and start telling everybody that it is, now you can use it for strep throat or, all of these things. And it's just because it was an in vitro study, a petri dish study, that doesn't have anything to do with how it's going to work in a person.
This is a reminder too, Dakota. This is a reminder of physicians who prescribe drugs.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a minuscule research that it's been done on it. It hasn't been done in all the environments and conditions in our bodies, which is why, now the list of side effects and symptoms are like 100 long. It's that same scenario of we need to empower ourselves as our own health advocates, as our own wisdom keepers, which is why this herbal database is being made available, is for us to do that particular research. I have a few things here to catch up with you on the chat room. One was Laura got back to us and said that when she mentioned the clary sage and lavender while she was pregnant, that was to treat depression and anxiety.
Thank you.
Because she was not taking meds during pregnancy.
Okay.
And then we had another question here. There's two more questions, but this one is, are there any negative effects to other essential oils being kept refrigerated? Like when you were talking about the contamination.
Not negative. You're not going to hurt any of them by refrigerating them.
Well, when you were talking about the...
well, you mean negative effects about the oxidation of...
Yes.
Yeah. They can become oxidants. They can become toxic so that you can have a reaction to them, some type of irritation. For example, there was an oxidized oil that somebody used on their feet for just a small, I don't remember what it was, but it was like a bite or something small. And they reacted to it and had wound up with lesions all over their foot. And so you can become hypersensitive and have basically like dermatitis or something like that. Now, they don't generally kill. You have to really take a lot of a high dose of an essential oil to have a fatal reaction. That's pretty rare.
Right. But I think we're mostly concerned where Jerry's asking is the negative effects to other oils just being kept refrigerated.
No. Oh, that you need to keep them refrigerated?
Well, okay. Are there any negative effects to other essential oils being kept refrigerated?
No, you want no negative effects to any of them.
Any of them.
What I'm saying is that you should keep lemon and pine in the refrigerator.
Okay.
And what I want to point out here too is here's where you can look for good essential oil sources. I've investigated all of these, and these people know what they're doing. So you can click on those links. And then I want to point out there's a lot here about safety, essential oil safety, how to choose a good supplier, aromatherapy in general, how to store essential oils, and how to determine the quality.
Okay.
And then look at chemotypes, because that gives you a lot of information. Whenever you buy an essential oil, there are tests that are done on them to determine what they contain. They should tell you if it's a chemotype, and that just means it's the same basic plant, but maybe picked at a different time of year, grown in a different place, and so the types of oils that are in it are going to be different from each other. Not all lavender oil is the same.
Okay.
Not all tea tree is the same. Oh, one thing about tea tree I do want to say. We know that tea tree is really effective against viruses, bacteria, and we use it a lot. One of the things they've discovered is that just like an antibiotic drug, overuse of tea tree oil, say on skin or whatever, for maybe a fungal infection, whatever, overuse of tea tree oil can lead to resistant strains of a bacteria growing on you. So we have to be careful, mix them up, have a variety.
We have some more information here. Okay, and Jerry, if and he says, thank you, Dakota. If you need more clarity on that question, just go ahead and type it in. We have, okay, so is diffusing or diluted topical application better than a diluted ingestion? That's one question. The other one, anything good for stopping addiction?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's another chapter.
Yeah, that's a whole show.
Yeah.
But yeah, you always want to, you have to be real careful using them neat. That means applying essential oil straight to the skin. They're very strong, and so the recommendation is to always dilute them in a carrier oil. And here, when you want to know about diluting, how to do it, you can go to diluting essential oils, and here are your guidelines on how to do like a 1% dilution, 3%, whatever. And so you want to dilute them, and as far as internal, that use that's incredibly controversial. This is where you really want to study up on the oil. We do know, for example, that peppermint essential oil is being used in a pearl, those little gel type caps. Very successful for IBS, intestinal bowel syndrome, or irritable bowel syndrome. And so that one is really good for that. But in general, learn about it thoroughly, and different people are different,
Can I say that the reason for the gel cap is because it doesn't break open until it gets farther down in the gut. It's very different from just consuming it straight into your stomach.
Yeah, thank you. And that's why, like, for example, Peter Holmes is one that recommends taking them internally, but he always says, if you're going to take it internally, you put a little olive oil in one of those gelatin capsules, like a double-out capsule, and then put a drop in that and close the capsule up. So we do see that people are promoting using them in cooking, but I think they're so diluted that it makes it safer. But anyway, using them internally, you learn about it. For example, like I said, that story about intestinal infection is a really good example where oregano is useful for that particular pathogen, but what was really going on was inflammation in the intestinal tract that was being worsened by that. And you got to have a good tissue state to heal. So,
Nice.
So a couple more things about this that I think I found interesting was, aromatic plants have been used, and it's the volatile oils in them that make them aromatic. They've been used thousands of years, but the way they used them was very naturally. Like 77,000 years ago, they were used in bedding materials, aromatic herbs, to protect the sleeper from insects and from mites and from bacteria. Animal bedding has been used that way. Pine boughs were used in Europe traditionally for stuffing mattresses, and in Switzerland, parts of Switzerland, they still use pine because it makes it's kind of like a protective bed against the aromatic material in pine is disinfecting the area around it and warding off insects. And so they used them that way. They had strewing herbs in Europe where they just threw like lavender on the floor to clean it. And we know about using them in sweat lodges and smudging, and all of that was purifying with the aromatics. So it wasn't until 700 AD that we actually started to diffuse herbs into hydrosols and things like that. So that's when the use of essential oils started becoming more refined. So let's move on. Oh, they wanted to know about what addiction. I'll just pull this up real quickly. I'm using the search box and I'm typing in addiction, and there's a bunch of different things here. So we've got main heading of addiction, and of course we want to know about withdrawal. And then there are different types of, there's food addiction, opioid, which is huge, sugar addiction, alcoholism, and under addiction withdrawal, which I imagine is what's most, what most people have in mind. These are some of the things that have been found to be very useful in relieving or in helping. But I do want to say on Shilajit, one of the things I just found, I used to love that, but I found out that Shilajit can contain a lot of metals that we don't want in our bodies, so I'm not sure about that. So there's some information here about that, and then more like an opioid addiction. Some of these things are very specific. So if you click on these articles or studies, they'll tell you a lot more. Yogic breathing for opioid addiction. So I'm going to close out of this for now, and let's get back to Anne. There we go.
Hello.
So Anne, while I was carrying on, did you have any thoughts about essential oils?
Yes, I did. So the past couple weeks I've been researching about sustainability and healthcare. I was going to organize an event. I don't know if we're going to do it in May or not, but so it's an interesting topic, and it's something I sort of always had in the background but had never really dug into as a topic, and I've been reading on it a lot. And this is really making me think about some of the stuff I was reading, because to me one of the big issues with the trend toward essential oils is that they're very resource intensive. They are, to me one of the wonderful things about herbalism is that I think it can be done in such a way that it's a sustainable form of healthcare. It can engage people into caring about the earth, and it can be done in a responsible, caring way that's supportive of the health of people, but then also the health of the planet. And a lot of what's going on with essential oils right now, I think, is really environmentally destructive. And there's just no reason why you would use an essential oil when you could use the tea for the same impact. You're using an enormous amount more herbs. So I think that it's such a problem in natural health, because people want to get away from standard practice medicine, and so the first people to scoop them up are marketers who are trying to sell them stuff. And so I feel the way you're nodding, it's like, so when you've actually tried to learn some real natural healing that is low impact, that is environmentally sustainable, there's not that much to sell.
The other thing that goes along with that, Anne, is that essential oils only cover one part of the spectrum of what we need to heal, because there are all kinds of plant substances that we need to take into our bodies, and they're not in the essential oils.
Yeah, and I think that, lavender to me is just the absolute classic essential oil, and it seems like that's for a reason. It's a great essential oil that's, it's not that destructive when it's kept in check in the place where it's from. And it's, it's wonderful. It doesn't, you can use it straight on your skin without a carrier oil. It's one of the only ones you can do that with. So it's very safe, and it's also just so versatile. It's really the one that my little travel herb pack, it's the one essential oil that I make sure I have with me because it does so much, So it's not as if I don't use them at all, but the trend concerns me a lot. And I thought it was interesting that addiction was the specific issue that got asked about, because I remember one time seeing a pamphlet from I think, really manipulative, dishonest essential oil company. They had these little trifold pamphlets advertising their oils, and the one about addiction was the one that really hurt to see. It was really offensive because I thought, so you're taking this population that you know is vulnerable and desperate, people who want something for addiction, and it listed 3 of the most expensive essential oils there are. It had, I think, jasmine, chamomile, and lemon balm, which are, those are all really high dollar things. And so I looked at this pamphlet. I was like, okay, so they're basically trying to tell you spend like $90 on these particular oils. And one of the wonderful things about herbalism to me is that it's kind of, when you know herbs well, you can use what you have.
Right.
Go in the grocery store and you can find something, wherever you are. And it's wonderful to learn all these details about the particulars, but it's also important to remember the broad picture that if it's a cheap oil that you like, if you like it, it's helping. It's good enough. You don't need jasmine and chamomile, and don't need marketers who are telling you that.
Yeah.
I think especially with, I really think that for the most part, aromatherapy is where essential oils really shine. I mean, that's what they're the best at. And I always think, the most important thing is that you like it, and that if you're carrying it with you, that I think part of what they do for you is they just give you a moment. So they give you. I've definitely had times in my life where I was carrying a sniffer and smelling it all the time, and it's something that I'll do if I know that I'm going to be in a stressful situation, and just to. I think breathing exercises can do this too. If you just to have something in mind that when things feel too hard, I'm going to do something about it. Just teaching yourself that you can do something.
And that reminds me about studies on anchoring and how our sense of smell is tied into our deepest, most long-lasting memories. And the state of mind that we're in when we have a certain smell can get anchored to that smell. And so if we have, for example, a period of anxiety and we're determined to overcome it, and we're relaxing and we're going, okay, this is when I'm going to, set this aside, and we're smelling lavender or whatever. They do work biochemically, but as like that anchoring with that smell to a relaxed state, it seems like one of the, if that is part of what works, it might be really helpful to take a scent. The floral scents are more relaxing. When you're feeling good, when you're feeling relaxed and happy, and anchor that happy, pleasant feeling with that scent. And it might even be more effective than when you start going crazy and you've got to get centered, to pull it out, take a smell.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And that's, I once took a really great class about essential oils, and I was using aromatherapy and palliative care was the topic. And it was, one of her recommendations was never use a single essential oil in a bad circumstance because you'll anchor it to that. So, so blend them. Put 2 or 3 oils together, and then you don't have to worry that you're going to create this association with a particular herb in the long run. So,
that's a good point. Yeah.
That one I also learned. Well, that class was so fascinating because she was working in hospice care and saying that a lot of the people who she was a nurse, a lot of the people she's dealing with, they're going to die. Like they might be dying tomorrow. And so then what roles can aromatherapy play to make that a better experience? And she talked a lot about how much of the problem of hospitals is the smell. And how it can be that, for example, a family member doesn't want to visit because it smells bad. And if you can use aromatherapy to improve the scent of the room enough that the person can spend more time with somebody, that's invaluable, And she was talking.
It's probably why we bring so many flowers to hospitals.
Yeah. To make them smell a little bit better. And something that I've used a lot that she talked about was, she said, when something's going on where there's a bad smell and then you add a lot of fragrance, then it can just emphasize the fact that something bad happened and make it
right.
thing,
That's like spraying a room that's dirty and it really needs to be cleaned first. And then you bring the essential oil to perfume it,
But that's when it's great to use the lemon and pine that you mentioned, these scents that are very clean. And lavender means to clean. Very clean scents, and spray them high and let them sink through the air. Because I do a lot of spritzers, actually. I work as a massage therapist, and I like to clean the air between clients. You don't notice it so much after 1 or 2 people, but after you've massaged 3 or 4 people, if you haven't sprayed the air, it gets pretty dank. So I make clean blends that it's not too much to smell. It's just that you spray it really high in the air so it can sink through and grab everything smelly and just kind of, so that when people walk in, they don't smell essential oils. They just don't smell anything.
Well, just the moisture, water changes it into the negative eons, just misting a space will immediately shamanically clear.
It does.
Yeah.
But also the essential oils, like you said, when they actually directly contact things, they kill them. So they actually kill the airborne bacteria and so forth. And I remember I had this very skeptical friend who I said something about, there's a study about, it might have been about sage smoke. It might not have been about essential oils, but it was about these airborne herbal particles killing pathogens in the air. And they said, see, it really does kill bad spirits. And metaphorically. I'm like, how is that metaphorical? It's rude.
We have some comments happening here in the chat room.
Great.
Both Tracy and Jerry, they love the anchoring smell memory. They like that, creating scent memory. We have Laura asking, is there any truth to the idea that if you like or dislike a certain essential oil scent, that you need it, like your body is asking for it? That's one question.
You want to take that one first, Anne?
I've heard that too, where herbal tinctures, if you like it, like let's say it's a heavy medicinal, it's got a real bitter taste, but it tastes good to you. I've heard that then you probably need it. It's good for you.
That seems to be the experience that I've heard a lot about too, that our tastes change according to what we need. And if you think about the nose for a minute and the sense of smell, its purpose, it's incredible. It's like we're not aware of it, but it's pulling in all of the chemicals that we're exposed to and transferring the signals to the brain, which is then going, this is probably bad and this is probably good. And so the best way to signal to us to take it or not is to say, give a sense of aversion if the chemical reading is harmful, or a sense of attraction if the chemical interpretation is beneficial. So I think in that sense that it could be a true thing, depending, it's like, I wouldn't say it's written in stone, because we can have mental filters also that determine things. But in general, I think that could be. What do you think, Anne?
What I've noticed is that when people really, really like something or really, really dislike something, it might mean it's really good for them or really bad for them. That it kind of cuts both ways.
Yeah.
And the German herbalists around the corner where I took the funnel class, one of them said that, and because it was the same question: if you're attracted to something, does that mean it's good for you? And they had the exact same answer I had. And so it was so funny to me that people from another, across an ocean had that same experience. Because I was like, well, what about sugar? What about alcohol? What about, people have, and my herb that I should use all the time, not all the time, but my herb is burdock. And when I was first trying to start taking it, I was just so repulsed by it. It was really, really hard. And because part of that is that you get into a chronic disease state. Sometimes it's a place of comfort in a way, and to leave that can be very difficult. You can really turn against the thing that would help you out. And I know also with movement that there's a real tendency that people go toward what they're already good at. If people are already flexible in a particular muscle, then they'll work on getting even more flexible in that particular place rather than working on the thing that's short.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you're bringing out, Anne, is that in terms of attraction or repulsion, it kind of makes a difference as to, of course, the reason for it. Also, I think a difference for, between what we're taking in as foods or comfort foods or ingesting, and I think also in terms of what we're smelling, because I think the nose, it has a little bit of a different sensitivity than it's tied in with the taste and all of that. But I have a feeling, and this is just, I'm just kind of speculating on this, but I have a feeling that what we eat is more closely tied to our our comfort levels. Is there's something real personal about what we take into our bodies that goes beyond just chemical signaling. And whereas scents, I don't know, it might be a little bit more more of an ancient tie to what our biology is trying to tell us.
That makes sense. Yeah. I always think if somebody's having a strong reaction to something, then it's probably relevant.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure necessarily how.
Yeah, which way?
Yeah.
Right. Is it good for me or bad for me? I'm having a response.
That's interesting. Maybe scent is more accurate than taste. I'm going to ponder that.
Yeah, I'm curious about it too. So let's move. Let me see what time it is. All right, we do have to move along, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view. Let's talk about vaccines, because that's a huge topic, and I'm curious to know if Germany requires as many vaccinations as we do here in the States. Here it's like you can lose your job if you don't take the vaccine of the day.
I don't know. I know that we had measles in my building 2 years ago. There are a lot of unvaccinated children here, so I know that it's possible, but I don't know the details.
Okay.
And I don't know the I just say, so, I mean, my take on vaccines is that the vaccines that are being used in the United States are incredibly low quality. That we've gotten locked into this conversation that's, for or against, when it seems like the quality is the serious issue.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right.
And I do want to show the database section on vaccines, because this is especially important, I think, for parents. But also, if you're a nurse or whatever, and they're saying you have to take the vaccine to keep your job.
Yeah.
So this is a really good section of the database, I think, to help answer some of that. I'm just clicking on the vaccine injury. I'm just going to click up here a little bit to the main heading, which is vaccines and vaccinations, and show you how you can get answers to some of this. So there's videos and links here that I think are pretty important that'll get you started on it. Oh, come on. All right. My screen is not moving. Why is that?
And try it again. You look like you have two things clicked on. Yeah.
And so there, we have some specific vaccines that you can click on, but the area that I think is really helpful, two areas. One is vaccine ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where what you're talking about, Anne, really comes to light, is what they're putting in them, the adjuvants. And so there are some links here where you can go, like this one, vaccine ingredients. You can go there and see everything that's in them and the different kinds of vaccines. And there's even a new syndrome, an autoimmune syndrome called Asia, the Asia syndrome, which is completely brought about by these vaccine adjuvants. Here's vaccine safety, go through this. But I think, and here's about vaccine injury, here's the Asia syndrome, the autoimmune. See, when you put this mouse over, more stuff often pops out. Autoimmune, autoinflammatory syndrome induced by adjuvants in vaccines. Vaccine injury can lead to food allergies. I'm going to skip that for now, but if you are seriously interested in this topic, these are going to take some time, but they're well worth your time. This was a conference on vaccine safety that's fascinating. So you can watch all of these videos by these doctors, scientists, where they really nail it. Here's about aluminum and myofasciitis, aluminum as a neurotoxin. These are all from this vaccine safety conference. So you get the whole conference here. Untested assumptions on vaccines, vaccination and health outcomes. So there's enough here in the vaccine section to just really give you something to work with. For example, there's vaccine exemption forms. And here you can look up your state and see what vaccine exemption forms are used. And then there are alternatives. Let's see, vaccine alternatives for parents that are concerned. And you can look up these links. And here's one, parents concerned about vaccines do have another choice. I'm just going to pull it real quickly. So in general, I agree with you, Anne. It's not so much the principle of vaccines, but all of the stuff that they're putting in them.
It's just an incredibly corrupt industry where they're selling, like they're getting legislation forced that requires people to take these incredibly low quality vaccines. To me, that's a completely separate issue from the concept of vaccines. Ties back into the history that we were doing 4 weeks ago, that people were using vaccines in the ancient civilizations. Culpeper was selling, what do you call it?
Was it cowpox or was that later?
What's up?
Was cowpox Culpeper, or was that later on?
That's right. Yeah. So I know he was, as an apothecary, he was buying people's scabs from them and then using them to make the medicine. So.
Wow. But then how does this compare to Germany? Are we talking about?
No, it's not a topic I've really looked into. I haven't had to get vaccinated here, and it hasn't been.
So it's not as Germany's not having the confrontation that we are.
Yeah, I know that it's a thing that people talk about. I don't have children, and I just kind of it's not something I've had to decide for any children. I think that's when it becomes a really hot topic for people.
Well, also here it's also it's the elderly, like they have little kiosks set up.
Flu shots and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was wondering, do you have information down there about using herbs to mitigate the effects if you do take them?
Yeah, I do. Although
Will Morris, who I just love, the acupuncturist herbalist in Austin, I know that he works with people where, they are going to take the vaccines, but then to make sure they're taking herbs before and after so that it doesn't cause as much damage to the immune system.
Yeah, there is information on that, although it tends to be more within the material on the herb itself than
okay.
Because I try to keep things from getting too cluttered.
Yeah, I understand.
But in the vaccine safety, in that whole section, zinc is one of the things that helps with augmenting the dangers of taking the vaccines.
Yeah.
So I think part of what I'm hearing, since you haven't heard about the issue, I don't think it's as big of an issue in Germany, because constantly here there's all these articles of concern about, people aren't getting the flu shots. I'm not talking about kids. I know. I know about it as an issue in the United States. I just, I haven't been injured by them. I've always just taken the ones that I was required by law to take, and it's not a decision I've had to make for somebody else. I think that's when people seem to get really, it's a huge decision to make for your child. And for yourself, because there's a point. When you've already gotten to 40 without being injured by them, you're just like, whatever, I'll take it. I'll take it,
We have a response here from Laura too. She's saying, in the vaccinations and all at once, U.S. actually stopped making certain single vaccines available, and so we are forcing vaccines for 5 or more illnesses at once on an immune system, immature immune system.
And what I've read is that a lot of the animals that are being used to produce the vaccines have been infected by so many other diseases before that even if they're, they're using this animal to get measles antibodies, then they're also mixing in antibodies for 30 other diseases. So there's those targeted ones, and then who knows what all else. It's way too much.
There we have that isolated research again.
Yeah.
They set up their own guidelines and then they follow them, and it's like it's not nearly the kind of research and experimentation that's serving us. Mm-hmm. No, it's just a random, somebody proposed it because it's never been proposed before. It gets passed because nobody knows better.
Well, that vaccine safety conference that I showed you, the video for that, anyone who really needs to understand what's going on, maybe your doctor's insisting that you give your 16-year-old daughter the HPV vaccine, if you need to get your facts straight, because you really have to know as much as or more than the doctors to be able to hold your own in that conversation. And people feel very strongly about it. It's like here in this country, it's so heated, like kids are kicked out of school. It's incredible. So if you are, you want to know the pros and cons, this is an area where education is a requirement, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we talked about this, Dakota, like we want to do a whole show just on being your own advocate.
Yeah.
All the things that we need to be aware of so that we can have enough knowledge and, enough chutzpah to go, excuse me?
Well,
I don't think so.
That gets us into another topic, Anne, that you had suggested that we revisit, and that's the Flexner report and AMA as to how all of this kind of got started.
Yes, because I find it so frustrating that so often people talk about the sort of social position of herbalism as if it just happened, as if it just somehow on its own just fell out of favor and stopped being so popular, and this just passively happened. But I mean, there's very specific history that happened in the United States that created the situation where herbs were out and surgery and chemicals were in, and that narrowed it so profoundly, that narrowed medical practice in the United States so profoundly. What can I say about that? The Flexner report in 1910, which is a report to Congress that was a survey of the medical schools. And my understanding is that was basically an attempt of the pharmaceutical companies and the AMA to completely take over and be the one authority that was able to say who's practicing medicine and who's not. So that history in the United States goes back to 1910 of the, that thing we all know of the pharmaceutical companies controlling medicine. It has a start date,
Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah, they forced the closure of a lot of the universities that were training people in other forms of medicine that had been, successful and efficacious. They were just a different approach using plants. And basically the medical schools where they taught plant therapies, the Flexner report just closed them.
Yep.
And has that report ever been challenged since then?
Well, and what happened is, so the report was read to Congress, and then they're going to decide what are we going to do as a result. And so what they ended up doing is saying, okay, instead of all these different schools and all these different organizations all being able to call people doctors, only the AMA will be able to make that decision.
Okay.
They wanted to standardize the practice. And they had a lot of clout in Congress. These were people that had a lot of money, very influential, and it was like a calculated kind of a coup in the medical industry. That's when it really became an industry where it's like, let's standardize it and we'll determine who can practice, and they're going to all be thinking like us, and we're going to tell them what to do, and they're going to do it, or we'll kick them out.
Yeah.
Okay, so where is that in Germany?
That didn't happen here.
It doesn't happen.
It didn't happen. They didn't have a big, this big takeover by the pharmaceutical companies. It doesn't, different things happen, but it didn't have that, like, just clearing house, getting rid of all these different styles of medicine all at once.
So where's the reciprocity? I mean, can a physician from Germany come into the States and be able to get their license easily?
I don't know exactly how that works.
I mean, because we do have that interaction going on, so I wonder what the protocol is.
I don't know exactly how that works. I did want to say, too, when I was, I said I was researching sustainability in healthcare, I was not expecting to find so much information about how polluting the pharmaceutical industry is. And that's actually, if you look at the environmental impact of standard practice medicine, I just had never really thought it through. But as soon as I started reading about it, the pharmaceutical drugs are actually a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, hospitals are very energy intensive because they have climate controlled and the air pressure is controlled, and they have a lot of machinery and everything. So they are energy intensive buildings, and there's transport and there's all this other stuff. But really the pharmaceuticals are causing the most environmental damage of any aspect of the system. And I didn't realize in how many different ways too. There's the production processes are quite polluting, and then there's so much that's given to animals that gets just dispersed out into the environment, and then that ends up. I mean, that's not just. All right, so another way that these things get into the environment is proper use, and then being peed into toilets and going out into the water that way. That's different source from animals who are just out there. It's not going into even a sewage system. It's just going wherever they poop. And I guess because I'm kind of a hippie and I want to be a peacemaker, and I want to say, oh, if that's how you want to do it, that's cool. I'll do it my way, and we can all live happily together. But then the more I read about it, the more I'm like, no, my way's right, your way's wrong. Don't do that.
Well, and one of the things about what you're saying, the human usage and excretion through bodily waste is a serious source of contamination of the water supply, and it can't be cleaned out of our drinking water.
Right.
One of the things that the drugs that are, like birth control pills, all that kind of stuff, in the drinking water, they can't get it out. And so, of course, animals are being affected by it. But we are too when we're drinking just you don't know what kind of drugs you're getting. You're getting the environmental chemicals now include pharmaceutical drugs, and there are a lot of antidepressants. Oh my gosh, there's so much. Antidepressant plus fluoride plus chlorine plus estrogen pills plus progesterone plus Viagra. What does that get you?
Right.
Well, and we go right back to the universities. I mean, my understanding is medical students, it's like they are required to listen to the big pharma presentations. And basically the business strategy is you make your money from pharmaceuticals, not necessarily from the wellness that you offer.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're in a position, so in Texas, I don't know, maybe it was 6 or 8 years ago, I met somebody who was a lawyer for alternative healthcare practitioners, and Texas is a little unusual because they have a very short legislative session every 2 years. So I've met a fair number of people who are lobbyists just for 3 months every 2 years on things, and so she was a lobbyist about medical issues, and she said that so the legislation that had changed was that it used to be that people could file a complaint to the medical examiners board in Texas anonymously and get doctors' licenses pulled without the doctor even knowing who they were. And so, of course, who was taking advantage of that? The insurance companies. And so, because she was telling me, don't worry about being an unlicensed practitioner in Texas. They're too busy persecuting good doctors. That takes up all their time, And she said they had all these doctors flew in, and they had all these letters from people who had studied medicine intending to practice in Texas, and when they found out what a hostile environment it was for doctors there, they decided to practice in other states because they said that an example she gave was 2 different doctors said they had prescribed more care than 2 weeks of antibiotics for people with Lyme disease, and so they got their licenses suspended.
Oh.
So they're in a situation where, this is why I'm very sympathetic to standard practice doctors in the United States. I don't see them as any kind of enemy at all. I think that they're in a terrible circumstance where, if you're locked into a situation where you have to decide, do I want to continue to be able to practice medicine after putting all these years and money into becoming a doctor, or do I make a stand and give this particular patient more drugs? It's, they do what they have to do. So
I just wanted to share that in the chat room, everyone is as passionately involved in this conversation as we are. Okay.
What
Well,
are you saying?
Yeah, there's lots being said, agreed upon. Don't accept that animal cruelty. There's spoken of vex, see vexed if you haven't already about vaccinations. No, I think everyone is participating right now in the chat room. We are all in this one.
well, let me show you the database again on the section on conventional medicine.
Mm.
So here's an area that you might want to look at. Statistic studies about conventional medicine, and this will help back you up if you've got a family fight about going to the doctor and doing what the doctor says. For example, here's one article, 1,500 common medical practices listed as having unknown effectiveness. That's just one. Okay, there's a lot of, this is interesting reading and well worth it. Then there's another section here on healthcare freedom. Interesting new developments coming on the line here. For example, you can order a doctor on demand through your phone. I've put some apps in here that are working towards medical freedom. Hospitalization is another important area. Hospital-acquired infections, ventilator-associated lung injury, and a lot of stuff on surgery. Changes in hospital physician affiliations in the hospitals and their effect on the quality of care. So if you have a loved one in the hospital, go through this section to find out what you're dealing with. Then about medical education, okay? Obviously, I haven't put too much in here yet, but it'll grow. Medical mistakes, new approaches to healthcare, and this is an interesting one because I like to see progress where we are actually advancing and not just stuck in the dark ages of the Flexner report and the AMA. So here this is encouraging to read. There really is an effort to improve healthcare, sustainable healthcare.
Yeah, I'm gonna read
There's
that.
a white paper on the collaborative approach to healthcare. So there's hope in this section. This is about the pharmaceutical industry. And here, of course, is a huge section on the pharmaceutical drugs. Just so you know, this gray color means anything that's poisonous. So you can look up the drugs that you're using there and see what their effects are. And a lot of times there are herbs that help to soften the negative effects. And we get into the AMA here, just some basic background information. The Center for Disease Control, this is a real interesting section. They aren't who we thought they were. And then here's the Flexner report, so you can read this for yourself and see what the whole story was on that. So this section, for anybody that's dealing with the medical system, ought to look at that. And then here's a good video on how to find a good doctor, what is integrative medicine, and then of course we get into the main part of the database on therapeutics, herbal therapeutics. So I just wanted to show you that a lot of this stuff is in here, and it kind of ties in with the vaccines and drugs so that we can be informed when we're dealing with these doctors. Let me close that. We lost Dear Woman, but she's coming back. So we've got about 15 minutes left. Is there anything that our chat people would like us to cover or that you want to cover, Anne?
I'm wondering, well, there was the question about depression and anxiety, and I was wondering about, maybe we could talk about that a little bit, because the question was asked.
Okay.
So here, let me give you just a little bit of what was said here. Another good documentary about Lyme disease. I think it was called Under Our Skin.
Okay.
And then Tracy says, I don't want a doctor on demand, but an herbalist on demand. That would be a great app. And let's see, I wish there was a way to get U.S. doctors into natural treatments. The profit motive is so lacking.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Anne.
Depression. It's, I think, so I had a very serious bout with depression when I was about 19 or 20, and that was a really formative experience for me. And so I think that's the first thing that got me buying health books at the health food store and trying to figure out how to treat myself. And it was very difficult and very frustrating to try to find answers to that. And I think that there's a number of different reasons why I was having the issue, but and they're all important. But for me, if somebody's depressed or having mood problems, I really want to look at the nutrition. And so I'm always cautious about, maybe this is a good topic for us to talk about a little bit, is about a lot of times people ask herbalists for an herb for a problem. And the way I think of it is that it's the same way that you have to prepare the soil in the garden before you put the plants in.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely. You have to have the foundation, and in traditional herbal medicine, it's always been the case, and it still is, that you start with lifestyle, nutrition, good air, good water. All of those have to be in place before you use a medicinal herb. And in the old days, when in parts of the world where there was a kind of a certification for herbalists, God forbid you offered somebody an herb if you hadn't already covered all those bases. Medicinal herbal treatment of any kind is kind of like the last on the list.
Yeah.
The lifestyle has to be there.
And I think part of that is that the way the world economy works now has so sort of perverted our ideas of the values of things that if, the movie where this really struck me, have you seen Der Zala? It's it's so great. It's a Kurosawa movie, but it's set in Russia, and it's these Russian soldiers are mapping in Siberia, and they meet this woodsman who's a native guy there, and so he's helping them through the woods, and they would die over and over again if it weren't for him knowing the woods. And there's a wonderful little herbal scene where somebody's made a circle out of vines and hung it on a tree, and this Russian soldier looks at it and just kind of throws it, and Dersu Zala, the woodsman, comes back and he grabs it, he puts it back, and he says, "This says there's no ginseng here," and hangs it back up.
Oh, wow.
People are leaving notes for each other in the woods,
Nice.
But that movie, this movie I always think of when I think of how much work it really used to take to gather herbs for people. To me, it's some of the most pleasant work to do, to go out and work with plants and then bring it home and turn it into medicine. But if I had to do that for, a group of 60 people and I was the only one who knew how to do it, it'd be a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's only because we're getting herbs from all over the world, and because so much of the the work is being done by fossil fuels, that we have this idea that herbs are this sort of cheap thing to start with. And I don't think we treat them as being as important and special as they are. The essential oils are the extreme of that, I think.
Yeah, so that's a need that needs to be addressed is, again, re-educating folks about the role that herbs play. And of course, the other part of the herbal understanding is that food is medicine. There's not a dividing line that's clear cut between plant foods and plant medicines, that the plant food is just as medicinal, you might say, as something that's thought of as, an outright medicine. And so it really comes, when we were at Moonflower together, do you remember what Rosita said in her keynote address when the people came to her? She had pretty much the same advice for all of them. Go home and this week eat a bag of apples and a bag of carrots.
A bag of apples and a bag of carrots, yeah.
We have a request here, Anne. Can you spell out the name of that movie?
Yes, I'm going to spell it myself first so I make sure I don't say it wrong.
Okay, and then I'll type it into the chat room.
Yeah, I wanted that too. I want to see that
It's
movie.
really good. It's one of my favorite movies. Okay, it's 2 words. It's D-E-R-Z-U.
D-E-R-Z-U.
Yep, and the second word is U-Z-A-L-A.
U-Z-L-A.
A-L-A.
U-Z-A-L-A. Okay, let's see. U-Z-A-L-A.
Yeah, it has all kinds of cool, survival in Siberia stuff.
There you go.
Great movie.
Je suis pour le poulet de Sicilienne. Je suis en direct dans quelques minutes. I think we were just told that we have about 5 minutes. Amira? I think so. For the public of CCN France. I am in, I think that's what they're saying. Is that
France is telling us that they've heard enough.
Or in 5 minutes, that show's coming on. CCN France. Okay, that's what I think that's what we're doing, is letting people know that the show that's going to follow us
4 minutes left
CCN
now.
France. So we should, start wrapping it up.
Okay. I just want to get one thing in real quickly to let you know that towards the end of April, we're going to be having on one of the traditional Ozark root doctors, who's carried on the tradition of the really, the old mountain magical herbalism, using all kinds of the old charms and things like that, and the herbs. And his family has a history here in the Ozarks in that. So he's going to be here. And I don't know yet what the next show is going to be about, but if y'all would let me know what you want to hear, that's kind of how I go.
Okay.
So thank you, Anne, very much for being with us again, and hope to have you on more in the future. It's been really fun having you join the conversation.
Yes, it's been an honor. I just thought this whole conversation has been so rich, and I recommend that anyone who's caught this show, go back and catch part 1. And I did get clarity. Yes, CCN France is the show that's following us. Hang in there with ConsciousConsumerNetwork.tv. Great thanks to Biggie and Mel and our chat room, man. Thank you for that conversation, you all. It was awesome.
So let's keep this going. Let's keep CCN on the air. And let's all live happy, healthy lives forever and ever.
Right on, right on. So you've been listening to the Herbal Knowledge Keepers. Go to the herbaldatabase.org so you can have access to that incredible wealth of knowledge. And next Tuesday, my co-host Rebecca Hahn will be back with me on Get Lit. Come back and join us. All right. Blessings, everyone. Thanks again, Anne.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Right on. And thank you, Dakota Granny Woman. A pleasure always.
And to you, but more of it.
All right. Mwah. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire, the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.